is going on out there, world? It's your boy Tommy on the spot, and your eyes are not deceiving you. I have company here with me today. I'm excited for this. It's a look back. We do this every now and then when we hit a 5-year anniversary or a 10-year anniversary of a show that I've been to live, and I'm very excited because I am joined here today by both folks that I was with for the Royal Rumble 2011. A 10-year anniversary of being at that show is coming up here in the coming weeks, and obviously at Royal Rumble season, what better time to jump on here and chat about our entire trip. But let's get into who is with me here. Over to my left, I got Tobey here with me. Tobey, how's it going today?
Doing well here, Tom. How you doing?
Good, doing well. Thanks so much for joining. And to my right, I've got James here. James, how are you?
I'm fine.
I laugh because James, about a year ago, James and I did our look back at the Royal Rumble 2010. We had gone to Atlanta, Georgia for the show. This year, not as far, but we did make the trip to Boston, Massachusetts. But because from where we last left off, I'll give you guys a little bit of a kind of a snapshot of our year to let you know, kind of, because at this point, we're all in our early 20s in the beginning of 2010. We admit as we lose one of our shirts there. We were all in our early 20s in 2010. So we're on a major different part of our life here. Now we're all in long-term relationships. I have a child. It's completely different from where we were back in 2010. But if you had to think about yourself in 2010, James, where were you at life-wise in 2010?
I was, I'm trying to think, I was a bushy-tailed 23-year-old. I was a pharmaceutical sales rep part-time. And, you know, I had the time to kind of travel around and just see a bunch of wrestling shows with you. So it was a fun time, like, definitely very interesting.
And how about you, Tobey?
I was still finishing up college. I was a year away from getting a degree, and I was just working in a retail store at the time, so I was just making do.
Excellent. Yeah, no, myself too, early 20s. I basically was at a point where if I knew a wrestling show was coming up, my company I worked for at the time encouraged us to use sick days, and if you didn't use them, you'd lose them. So I'd burn a sick day every time wrestling would come within, you know, any sort of distance to New York that was somewhat doable. And so I'd call out, and away we'd go. And at the time, I actually had a YouTube channel.
You did?
I did, and it kills me to this day because I do feel like if I had taken YouTube much more serious back in 2010, 2011, I think that it could have been just the most incredible YouTube channel, very well established 10 years later. But instead I didn't do any tags. I didn't even change the, what are those called? The little pictures, the thumbnails. It was all just me, random shots. And as I look back at those, we watched those videos earlier today to refresh our memory on our trip. And I just totally, by having those, we never brought the cameras into the shows because we thought if we did, we'd be kicked out of the shows. So you don't have any of the footage from the shows. But I went on so many trips back then. We were just reminiscing about it before the show. Where we last left off with James and I going to Atlanta for the Royal Rumble. From that point forward, April 25th, 2010, James and I were joined by a couple of buddies at the time and went to Baltimore, Maryland for the Extreme Rules show.
We did. I do remember that.
That was a cool show. From there, the three of us got together. June 21st, 2010, we all went to the, I believe it was the Bridgeport, Connecticut, whatever arena was there, for an episode of Monday Night Raw, which was headlined by the Nexus, who had debuted 2 weeks prior, destroying and laying out Vince McMahon.
You know, I'll be honest, Tom.
Yes.
All those events blur together in my mind. Like, the idea of distinguishing them one from another is so difficult for me.
So,
that whole year was a blur. Like, I feel like I can, like, the 2008-2010 period, like, back when I was doing that stuff, I feel like I can't remember anything at all. Maybe we were drinking too much. I don't know.
Well, it might have, I mean, certainly this is not top of mind for me. I did some research before the show. I was trying to sit there and figure it all out. Probably that particular Bridgeport show, because it's so close to Stamford, Vince McMahon drove there, and we were still doing the thing where after the show you'd wait around for all the wrestlers as they were leaving, and we waited for every last wrestler to go home, and the final person to go home, flying out of the arena. Do you remember who it was?
I don't, but if you tell me, I'll remember it.
It was Vince McMahon.
Okay,
it was going about 100 miles an hour, breezed past us. We were the only three waiting, and it right in eyesight of where we were standing, you could actually have walked into the arena and helped to take down some of the ring pieces. Obviously, they would have kicked us out, but we never did take that plunge. But you wanted to. You said.
I mean,
well.
I've worked on many a TV and film project. I now work professionally in TV and film. And you'd be amazed if somebody has like a hard hat and like some equipment on them. They could probably just like breeze past security. I've seen things like that happen before, so
yeah,
it wouldn't be that crazy for us to do that.
And I don't think they would have been. I mean, there was no one else around, so we probably could have at least gone literally right down to the arena floor. Where we were standing, you could see it.
And once they're tearing the ring apart, what do they care?
Right. Probably like, hey, help us out. From there, obviously Nexus debuts. At this point, Daniel Bryan is out of WWE. James and I went to a small gymnasium in New Jersey for one of the very first ever Evolve wrestling shows. Might have been the first one, in which Daniel Bryan and Karma were on that show.
Oh, Karma was great.
Who was actually on the Netflix show that you watched.
Glow, yeah.
Glow, yeah.
Sadly, they didn't keep Glow for season 4. They were going to renew it, then they canceled it, I think because of COVID, so...
And then from there, October the 30th, in Hartford, Connecticut, Tobey and I almost broke kayfabe. Tobey and I went to it was a house show, it was Fan Appreciation Day.
It was a lot of fun. That show was just awesome. Everything that was going on was awesome.
It was right before Halloween.
Right before Halloween. I just remember all the guest appearances that came on. You were going nuts during those. You were shouting everything, screaming at the top of your lungs.
So that was a show that was $10 tickets, and the reason for that was because Linda McMahon was running for office for mayor.
Unsuccessfully. Sorry, Linda.
Yeah.
But so
if it was 90s Linda McMahon running, the one that was like backing Stone Cold, she could have won.
That's right.
This 2000s Trump supporting Linda McMahon, not as likable in the public eye, I don't think.
And WWE had filed an injunction, actually went to court and won because they were trying to ban WWE T-shirts from the polls. So at the beginning of the show we went to that day, Vince McMahon came out and he advised everyone, feel free to vote, to go out and vote, and make sure feel free to wear your WWE shirts.
Was I there for that one?
No, it was just two.
Okay, I was gonna say, like,
we
I
drove to
do not
Hartford. We
remember
went like
that.
100 miles an hour. We stopped, picked up a costume, came back. It was $10 tickets. Triple H, who was out at the time with an injury from that Extreme Rules show we went to,
Oh, God.
made a one-night only appearance.
Yep.
And I did go nuts. I did. I was very surprised because they didn't normally do that for house shows. So $10 tickets. It was a lot of fun. And then that led us to November 29th, 2010, where James and I took the day off work, and we went down to the Wells Fargo Center in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, for a 3-hour edition of Monday Night Raw, which was the King of the Ring tournament, which was won by Sheamus on that night.
God, 2010 pushing Sheamus.
He really got everything.
It was an interesting time.
And so now, all of that going through, I mean, clearly, at this point, we were probably at our peak of going to tons of WWE, tons of wrestling shows. Would you say this was the peak of your fandom of being a wrestling fan?
I don't know when the peak... Actually, I don't know. I feel like when I was in, like, middle school, junior high school age, like, all of my close friends watched wrestling, and, like, my friend's dad took us to SummerSlam 98 and MSG. That was a really big deal.
Oh, man. I want to miss. That's awesome.
So I feel like that... I mean, I don't know. I feel like sometime between 98 and, like, 2002, like, you know, late Attitude Era, before things kind of shifted in those, like, mid-aughts, I think that was my peak wrestling fandom. Although I did allow myself to really jump back into it after graduating college and having that free time to do so.
And how about you, Tobey?
I was in and out when I was in middle school, elementary school, but then I really got into it around this time, and I really got into it more with CM Punk. He really got popular. That's when I really got glued into the shows.
Well, this year, 2011, not to cut you off, but is the year of CM Punk. And
Yes.
so this kind of starts that, and this is kind of right at the tip of the iceberg before everything really just starts to unravel for WWE in terms of just things getting kicked into the next year. A couple weeks after this Royal Rumble show, The Rock returns. Middle of the summer, CM Punk's promo happens, the Zack Ryder revolution by the end of the year. I go to this, in this year, 2011, I go to Rumble Mania and Survivor Series, so there'll be plenty of look backs about the whole year here on the channel. But yeah, so you were saying that was probably your peak, was that middle of 2011?
Yeah, right around that time, and even after when it was coming back to New York, WrestleMania, we worked Access.
We did.
That was a lot of fun doing that.
I don't want to give too many spoilers, because you
Yeah.
know that in a couple of years we'll be bouncing back on here and all chatting about that. But absolutely, that was a lot of fun, and this leads us now to 2011 and the Royal Rumble, live from Boston, Massachusetts. One of the things that really jumps out to me when I think back to our trips here, and I think why we went on so many trips for wrestling shows back in the day, was the idea that we made them fun. We didn't just go to the wrestling show, we didn't drive down for several hours, go to the wrestling show, jump back in the car and leave. I mean, even when you're thinking back to us going to Philadelphia for that Raw, when you go back and look at that day, we went to Patty's Pub, we went to go get cheesesteaks, went to Cracker Barrel. Certainly, as you called it, it was not a healthy day by any stretch of the imagination, but we turned it into a full day affair, and at this particular juncture, we went to Boston for the entire weekend, left on a Friday, another time where, again, yours truly, utilized that old call-out day, and we all went down there. I might have actually put in a vacation day. I think I probably put in a vacation day for that one. And the three of us were hitting the road, getting down to Boston, Massachusetts. And I will say, if you guys are looking back at this trip, what are some of the things that first come to your mind?
The hotel was really nice where we stayed, actually, believe it or not. I was surprised. Very comfortable. And we got a lot of alcohol and had a great time.
We definitely, so at the time, yes, and we're drinking beers now, but at the end of the day, most of us, right now it's definitely few and far between, but at the time that certainly was not the case.
No.
It was, we had indulged in some. This is the time period where Four Loko was very big.
Four Loko is my jam.
James loved his Four Loko.
Four Loko and I had a really close relationship back then. That was the old recipe before they changed it to the weird malt liquor thing it is now. Back when it was making people's brains explode and killed a few people, they kind of had to change the formula. But the old formula, the one that killed people, great, amazing, unreplicated, never been done before. Incredible. You drank one, and I feel like we used it as a mixer because we were crazy. So we were it was Four Loko and then vodka is what we drank before we left the hotel.
Yes. We got down there. There's a famous video out there that I will not post. You guys will have to find on your own of me quite inebriated at a bar that I'm proclaiming is the greatest bar of all time. I think the name of the bar was not the greatest bar of all time, but rather the Fours, which is where we started our evening there.
How ironic.
And then the next day, we spent the entire day kind of just sightseeing some of Boston. I think we went to not the
Harpoon
Brewery, because we couldn't get into Sam Adams, if I'm not mistaken.
It was also a little out of the way, I think, Sam Adams, compared to where Harpoon was.
Harpoon was really good.
Yeah, just drinking the entire time. That's how you do it in Queens.
That is, it's true.
Yeah.
And then we went. You have a funny story about us going to the Harpoon Brewery.
So afterwards, I guess we all had to go to the bathroom really badly, and I guess what happened was we couldn't find anywhere to go, and none of us wanted to just go outside in public and just do it. So we ended up at an old folks' home. And
did we?
Yes, we did. And this is very strange what happened. Someone let us in, and we used the bathroom, and a lot of people were very angry at us, telling us to get out. Why would you let them in to use the bathroom? And we didn't want to go in public.
I remember none of that.
Yeah, you tell me the story on the way.
Was I drunk?
You were in the car.
Okay, I was like,
Thomas
what?
really had to use the bathroom, and I did too.
Okay.
And we ended up.
I think I just peed outside like a normal person. So.
Thomas wanted to pee inside like a normal
civilized
person.
individual that you two were.
And
yeah.
I did that too, and the old people were not happy at us. But you know what? They don't remember us now. I don't know if they're still around.
Oh, I hope they are. But yeah, this was the time period also where Affliction was big. So every day I wore an Affliction T-shirt. Usually
I did not.
Nor did I.
Affliction T-shirt, usually a tap-out hoodie and either a tilted fitted or a beanie that may or may unisex beanie, and that was my wardrobe pretty much every single day during this time period.
All day.
Don't look at me and talk about beanies. I hate on beanies.
No, beanies are great. Yeah. I love beanies.
But it's not Affliction though. You're wearing a good one. Too.
Yeah. So that's probably what I remember most. I remember we also went to the Neptune Diner, which had some really good food.
Neptune Oyster.
Okay.
Known for their seafood, and I think I got a lobster roll, and I tried to convince these two to get something in the seafood realm, and they're like, oh no, I think we're just going to get some burgers. And I'm like, you got burgers, and then at the very end, because I encouraged you, you had some fried oysters on top of your burgers. Did you both love it? You were both really into it.
Yeah, that was good.
I mean, you would have liked the lobster roll even more, but, back then... God forbid.
And even though, so typically when a lot of folks go to these big wrestling shows, nowadays there's always one or two other events that are going on. We were never huge on doing too many extra things other than, too many other extra wrestling things, independent shows, any of that stuff. The only thing I remember of that weekend was there was a Hacksaw Jim Duggan autograph signing.
There was not a Hacksaw Jim Duggan autograph signing. Hacksaw Jim Duggan brought a folding table to the front of the venue the Rumble was happening at, and was asking for like $30 or $40 for like an old, 8x10 of him signed. That was not an official signing by any means. That was Hacksaw Jim Duggan went to Home Depot, bought a table, and then put himself in front of the venue trying to make money. Which, you know what? good for him. First winner of the Royal Rumble, right? So
he is the first winner of the Royal Rumble.
That's right.
So he'll always have that, and only that.
Before we get into the actual show, James, I think you said you had a good karma story that you wanted to tell.
I did. When I was working on season 2 of FX's Pose, the head tailor actually was the one who made Karma's entire wrestling costume.
Oh, wow.
And a bunch of other wrestlers' outfits as well. So, and she had lovely things to say about Karma.
Yeah, Karma, one of the first women ever to participate in the Royal Rumble, and I think it's something that WWE never fully got behind.
Ahead of her time. Ahead of her time. Had she come out during this new women's revolution, I feel like she would have dominated.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, she was great, and
even her gimmick back then I thought was great.
Yeah, I think she was there to destroy the divas.
Yeah,
that
that weird broken doll promo stuff they did, I thought it worked.
And Adam, now, Tobey, getting into this show here, this Royal Rumble show, this is your very first WWE pay-per-view.
Yeah.
So is there anything you remember going in, any differences that you remember thinking about a pay-per-view as opposed to TV taping or a house show?
It was much more exciting actually being there and seeing, well, you were telling also this was a 40-man Royal
Right,
Rumble
this is a
too.
40-man Royal Rumble.
So you were telling me how exciting this is going to be and who's going to possibly be there. And then, I don't want to jump ahead, but some of the wrestlers that came out really surprised me, some of them. And I was like, jumping for joy. I was like, holy, this is unbelievable.
Yeah, and I mean, definitely, I'm sure part of that reason that I was hyping it up so much is because I was wanting you guys to agree to come to the show. But at the same time, for me, I just love the Royal Rumble. I think it's one of the most fun events ever to kind of happen. The idea of doing the countdown live, seeing all the surprises. You never know who's coming out at the Royal Rumble. And yeah, this being 40 men entering the Royal Rumble was something that I think we were all really excited about. Speaking of something I was really excited about, before we finally got to the actual venue, one other last story to tell. At the time, right before we had left for the Royal Rumble, I had, and the reason why I'm telling the story is because it kind of goes through the entire year of 2011. You continue to hear updates about this because I do think it's an interesting idea of kind of the start of a relationship, the peak of a relationship, and then the downfall of a relationship by the end of the year. But at this show was the very first show that I had gotten a call and picked up the phone and called a young lady who very quickly would become my girlfriend at the time, and that was the very first day. It was the day of the Royal Rumble, and I remember going out and making a call at a coffee house and coming back, super excited that I had met this young lady and that it had gone well. We had agreed to go on out on our very first date the next week.
Yeah, what a cursed relationship that
was. Certainly.
What a down relationship.
What was not a great one, but we'll continue to tell stories in future looks back here as we look back at the year 2011. A little background, wrestling-wise, before we get into the show here. This show, the main surprise entrant that many people were expecting at this show going into it was Triple H. He had been out of action since Extreme Rules 2010, and the rumored card for Wrestlemania at this time was that Triple H would be returning to take on King Sheamus and get some revenge for his takeout going into from the Extreme Rules. There was also rumors that The Undertaker might be coming back. They just started airing the vignettes for 2/21/11, and even though some folks thought this may have been the debut of Sting, it ended up being the return of The Undertaker, which many people, the rumor was he was going to be returning to take on Wade Barrett, who at this point was the head of the Core, who we all liked because our main group of friends is the Core group.
That is the name we gave our friend group.
Yes, before the Core.
I believe the Core had 2 R's in it, the WWE version. Ours did not.
Ours did not.
We didn't add that extra R in there. So.
No, that is, I think at the time I had broken up with someone and we were all out together, and I think threw up something on social media that said, this right here is the Core, all I need is the Core group, and that was the original Core group. Was I believe it was 7 of us.
I don't see why you bring your past relationships into it.
Well, I'm saying, I think that's how it started.
Okay, sure, why not?
I think that's how the Core group really originated, and that was back in 2008 or 9.
Maybe.
So, in any event, so let's get into it here. The Royal Rumble 2011. Getting into the show, I think for me, one of the big things was going down to Boston, Massachusetts. Was this your first time going to Boston?
No, I've been to Boston before.
Is this your first time?
My first time.
His first time? Look at that. Did you know that?
No.
And I remember going into this, there was a huge snowstorm. And somehow, not only did I convince you guys to still come, but I convinced Tobey to drive in the midst of that snowstorm to Boston. What a trooper.
You lucked out. Toby drove that whole way.
Yeah, he did very well.
Loads of fun.
Lots of snow, about 2 feet of snow. With so much snow in Boston itself. They got even more than New York did. But we still were able to make it down there And the card itself, because it was a 40-man Royal Rumble, was very, very short. It was only three additional matches that were on the show. It was a world title match, Edge versus Dolph Ziggler. A WWE title match, The Miz defending against Randy Orton. And a women's title match, which was Lay Cool going against Natty Neidhart in a 2-on-1 handicap match. Funny fact about this eventually became a fatal 4-way with Eve Torres thrown in there. But when I had gotten the shirt, and I looked everywhere for this shirt and couldn't find it, this is a great chance I sold it, which is depressing. But on the back of that shirt where they had the match card, they already had the 4-way listed, which we already noticed and said how weird it was that they just spoiled their own show on that card, but they ended up doing that. And then the 40-man Royal Rumble itself. Any memories you guys have of the first 3 matches?
I just think the women's division's come a long way since then.
Absolutely.
All respect to Natty Neidhart though.
Yeah.
But
I agree with
no,
that.
I'm sorry, Michelle. I will never understand the Michelle McCool push. I mean, yeah, she was with the Undertaker, but still,
Well, yeah.
might
Might be part of it. I mean, she was the first ever Divas champion.
they had better talent back then.
They, I think, Lay Cool, they weren't the best in the ring. I thought character-wise, they were really bad.
I thought Layla
they were good heels.
she had a great she had a great heel persona. Michelle
Yeah.
McCool, not as much.
Not as much as Layla.
Wasn't she complaining on Twitter that WWE didn't acknowledge her recently? Wasn't that a thing that she was upset, or the Taker was tweeting about how she wasn't acknowledged in some kind of women's
Yeah, top 50 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she ended up complaining about
I mean,
that.
she wouldn't be in my top 50.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure she'd make mine either.
I would even put Awesome Kong above her.
Yeah.
As short as her stint was as Karma.
Yeah. Edge and Dolph Ziggler. Dolph Ziggler, it's really interesting to go back and look at Dolph Ziggler here. This is a guy who was on the rise. 2009 SummerSlam, he goes up against Rey Mysterio and then kind of flounders in the mid-card for years till finally getting the shot at the Royal Rumble 2011. The stipulation of this match was that Edge could not use the spear, and does so after the match, which, believe it or not, in 2011 leads to Dolph Ziggler's very first world title run. Do you remember that at all?
I remember it vaguely. When was Dolph Ziggler's Vicky Guerrero?
That was their...
Okay, so
yeah.
I like that for him. I thought that was a good...
That was his, yeah.
That worked for him. I thought the two of them together worked.
I knew he was going to do the spear.
Yeah, I think that was his whole deal. Everyone was cheering for it, and ref went down, but Vicky ended up getting revenge, took the title away. Edge got it back real quick. It was a little taste for Dolph Ziggler, and then he wouldn't hold the title again for another 2 years, and then when eventually did win the title, the night after WrestleMania 29, that was the last time he ever did. I don't feel like Dolph ever lived up to his potential.
He could have been better. I think he could have been
I mean,
more.
considering where he started in the Spirit Squad, I feel like...
That is true.
He came a long way.
Yeah. He
That
could
is-
have been more. I think he could have been much more.
I agree. I think at the time, too, people were really getting behind him. That's a great match. You're going to go out of your way to watch one match from this show other than the Rumble. It's definitely Dolph Ziggler and Edge. I went back and watched that. Didn't remember too much about it, but it was a really fun match. People were a lot of fun near falls in that one. Go check that one out. Next up, The Miz against Randy Orton. And looking back at this, how did you feel about The Miz as world champion?
I wasn't a fan of them.
No.
I feel like back then they maybe pushed him a little too soon in that world champion spot, so...
What about
It was
you?
a good storyline,
I think you're a little off center.
Nah, it was a good storyline with him, but it was a little too much. Like what James said, it could have pushed it. It was okay.
I think at the time, I was looking very much forward to anything other than John Cena and Randy Orton. And so the idea that Miz had the title here, I remember being like, I needed Miz to hold on to this title. He had just won he had just cashed in Money in the Bank. This is also during the era of heel Michael Cole, if you remember that.
I do.
And so Michael Cole loved The Miz, and he added a lot. He was so annoying, but it kind of added to The Miz's world title reign. They obviously also during this time period had the anonymous Raw general manager, when Michael Cole, the little buzzer would
which
go
turned
off.
out to be no one? Did it turn out
And
to
eventually ended up being
Hornswoggle? Yeah. But wasn't that a
It was
last
a
minute?
dumb-
yeah.
It was,
Years later, we found out it was. There was no reveal or anything. And he'd get on the mic and he'd do the "and I quote," and the whole crowd would be "and I quote," "and I quote," and then he'd get up and say it. But yeah, so I thought Miz at the time. I was really into Miz. I liked him. I liked Alex Riley, A-Rye with him. Never forget A-Rye getting pulled over and for some sort of like a DUI or something, and then coming out on Raw the next night and saying, "And as everyone's read on TMZ, nobody parties harder than A-Rye," which I thought was pretty important, considering the guy legitimately had.
Probably wouldn't happen today.
No, definitely wouldn't happen today.
I just think back to all the talent they had that they weren't really pushing.
Yeah.
Wade Barrett, I feel like could have been a thing.
Yeah.
he could have.
I thought Drew McIntyre even back then could have been a thing.
Yeah.
They were all
Chosen
they were all enjoyable to watch then.
I mean, more so than some of the people they were pushing. So.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think them pushing anyone was a big deal because for years they were pushing no one. So.
Well, and this Miz title run is something that CM Punk talked about on his documentary and his Blu-ray that was something he couldn't stand. The idea that like finally they had a chance for a new heel to be main eventing WrestleMania, which was all in part basically just to lead to The Rock and Cena's story. And Punk thought it should have been him. And instead, The Miz was the guy that tapped for it. But this was a guy that was doing every single talk show, anything WWE needed. He was the guy. He was down to do it. And it ended up paying off for him because he got a little world title run here.
Well, look where The Miz is now, too.
Right. He's not... probably never... Well, he does have Money in the Bank again, so maybe someday he'll have the title, but has never held it since then. Certainly fell down the card rather quickly. His match here with Randy Orton, I think he wins, but he wins because half the world interferes in the match. And so, his wins would never come decisively. They were always with a ton of chicanery going on.
But
and
I feel like that's the way you had to like put over a heel like him. You could you could let him win cleanly any time he was in a match.
The cowardly, type of heel.
Yeah.
Then from there, obviously the Royal Rumble itself, the 40-man Royal Rumble. This match is probably most remembered for the two big holy... Well, so okay. Before this starts, there's a famous tweet out there from Carlito. If everyone remembers
Caribbean Cool.
Caribbean Cool.
Yeah.
He spits in the face of people who don't want to be cool. And he had put out a tweet that said, can't wait to see, or something to the extent of, can't wait to see which white guy they put over this year. Which was only interesting because of the fact that the winner of the Rumble was not white. It actually was a Hispanic in Alberto Del Rio. And Carlito had to kind of eat his words and apologize a little later. But, at the time, I remember going into this, who did you think was going to win the Royal Rumble?
I think in my mind, I thought it could have been maybe an off chance of a Drew McIntyre, Randy Orton. I'm trying to think who else was in it that I thought actually had a chance to win it. Wade Barrett. They never let Jericho win a Rumble, did they?
No.
Was he in the company at the time? I don't know if he was even in this Rumble.
I think he was there.
No, he wasn't.
No.
You know who was, though, was Cody Rhodes. And Cody Rhodes did not show up at the Rumble because he was selling his heinous attack at the hands of Rey Mysterio, where he busted his face due to the 619.
I love that mask moment that he did. I thought that was great.
He was transitioning from dashing Cody Rhodes to the dastardly Cody Rhodes with the mask, which I thought was pretty entertaining.
I think if we've seen anything, it's that Cody Rhodes had the star potential. They just didn't know what to do with him back then.
Absolutely, yeah. Who did you think was going to win going into it?
Honestly, I thought, one of the surprise guests who could have won it, I thought Diesel might pull it off when he came out really late.
Mm-hmm.
When he came out late, I thought he could do it, but then, not really. He was out pretty quickly.
So,
who did you think was going to win top?
I definitely thought it was John Cena, without question. I thought Cena in Boston, in his hometown, was going to take this, and because I knew the plan was going to be Cena and Miz, and I figured they were building to that, and so it was going to be Cena. And I remember just hoping it was going to be somebody differently, which it ended up being, but I think probably the number one moment that most folks remember from this is the two surprise entrants in both Diesel and Kevin Nash and Booker T. And one of the things that's interesting about that is they had agreed they had agreed basically with a handshake that they were going to be who were being promoted by TNA to show up on their show Tuesday night, which was Tuesday after the Rumble. And WWE kind of swooped in, signed them both to a deal, and had them both to show up at the Rumble. What were your thoughts when Booker T's music hit, while the Nexus kind of cleared house there and was running roughshod?
I mean, Booker T's music is so, iconic. I feel like it was, a moment. I was excited. Even though Booker T, I think he was behind the mic for a while.
He was, yeah.
But, I just feel like, he brought a good energy to the ring, so...
Yeah. What were you thinking, Adam and Tobey, when Booker T came out?
Oh, the electricity throughout the crowd. Everyone was so excited when he came out, him running out, everyone was just like, whoa.
Yeah, it's interesting. For me, I always think of, I was marking out, bro. A little shout out to my man, Matt Stryker, who does commentary on this show and loses his mind when Booker T returns and says that famous phrase, oh man, this is what you live for as a fan. At the end of the day, I'm just a fan. And Michael Cole's telling him to calm down. He said, I can't calm down. I'm marking out, bro. And that was the end of Matt Stryker as a commentator for WWE, which was very, very sad. Very, I felt for Matt Stryker. He's
Queens very own
Queens
Matt Stryker.
Guy.
Yeah.
Ended up teaching for both of our high school, Cardozo High, And, he had finally lived his dream, was a good commentator for WWE. He called WrestleMania 26 and seemed to be a mainstay with them. But after that, WWE just does not like the wrestling lingo, that kind of smart fan wrestling lingo there. But I think if we look back at this show, and I kind of went back doing some research of 10 years ago at the Wrestling Observer, which I am a subscriber to now, and I was not at the time, they had an entire show the night before this Rumble detailing that Booker T and Diesel were going to return, which was surprising because we had no clue.
I feel like I thought that maybe Kevin Nash could have had an off chance at coming back.
Because you had a friend who was at the show who said that they saw somebody at an airport.
She thought she saw Kevin Nash. That's who she thought she saw.
I thought she was feeding us misinformation about
That's
something.
what I thought too. But then when she said that, you guys were
because
like...
in addition to Kevin Nash, I feel like she also said like 8 other names
Yeah.
and didn't end up
She
showing
said a
up.
lot of
So
different names.
Rodney
But
Piper,
I feel like she threw out everyone
She got
from.
one of them right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, one.
Every broken clock, I guess, is right twice
Yeah,
a
one
day.
at least. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that, that to me is like one of the reasons why, avoid the wrestling journalists as best you can during the Rumble, because it's so much more fun when somebody can remember that. I think the only other surprise really at the entire show was Hornswoggle. And at the time, it was like Hornswoggle was like...
Yeah, throwing away a spot for Hornswoggle.
Right.
That's half a spot.
Well, and that was the thing. I mean, you had 40 entrants, but 10 of them were like Yoshitatsu, Tyler Rex.
Leave Tyler Rex out of this.
I mean, it was great because those guys got a little bit of a shine.
I thought Ezekiel Jackson had a shot, Tom.
Well, Ezekiel was a part of the core.
Yeah.
So you knew you had 9 entrants right there because the core had 4 members, New Nexus had 5, and they were kind of building to what was supposed to be a match between the two factions, kind of 3-on-3 style at WrestleMania. Obviously, you had Punk with Orton, and then you had Wade Barrett, who was rumored to be The Undertaker. Instead, the New Nexus guys get picked off one by one. Husky Harris would go back to developmental, and he would reappear many years later as, does anyone know?
Yes.
Do you know? No, he's not now. Who do you want?
Bray Wyatt.
That's right. It was Bray Wyatt. Very early Bray Wyatt. If you want to go back and take a look, you can see a charisma-less Bray Wyatt.
They did him dirty with that Husky Harris persona.
Yeah.
Though. Like, you don't have to put Husky in his name.
And really, if you look back, I mean, I think David Otunga is still in the company
Is
doing some sort of pre-shows here or there,
Okay.
but he's not really, like, too a part of it. Curtis Axel's gone. Mason Ryan is gone. CM Punk isn't there. Husky Harris is the only one of that group to remain, and he's also the only one with the core group members. Ezekiel Jackson is gone. Heath Slater is gone. Justin Gabriel's gone. And Wade Barrett just returned recently as an NXT commentator, but really the one guy to outlive all of those 9 guys in the faction wars there was Husky Harris.
Who would have thought? No one.
If
Absolutely no
you had
one.
Husky Harris on in your pool, you'd have been right. Other thoughts on the Rumble here? Does anyone remember who the final participant eliminated in this Royal Rumble was?
Was it Santino Marella?
It was Santino Marella. Very good,
I
James.
kind of remember that.
That's right. So Santino came in, hit under the ring, immediately, basically gets kicked out of the ring, hides in the ring. Everyone forgot about him.
He was hanging on by his hand. He was literally hanging on by a thread.
Well, he had the Cobra.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I'll be honest, at the end there, I was
I
rooting for
thought-
Santino.
I was
I thought it
too.
was-
I
was
would have been.
just because it was like Del Rio felt like
I-
such a, I mean, I didn't mind Del Rio back then, knowing we know now. I'm kind of,
Yeah, it's a little
I kind
crazy.
of wish that Cena
Yeah.
did win that
But
year.
Santino,
Yeah.
though, when everyone saw him come back in there, the crowd just went nuts and thought he might actually pull it off.
I don't think anyone really thought that, but I mean, I just think people thought anybody with Del Rio really.
Right. Yeah, I think that. So I guess that leads to my next question was: did you take Alberto Del Rio as a credible Royal Rumble winner when he won the thing?
No, I feel like at the end of that Rumble, it felt very underwhelming. We were at the Rumble the year before, and Edge winning, like, the crowd was just, like, electric afterwards. Everyone was so excited for him to come back and win. But Del Rio winning felt very, like, after 40 entrants.
Maybe they're trying to change things up with him winning.
I mean, I don't
Well, I
know.
think it was somebody different. That is true. That's a good point.
But you saw the crowd reaction at the end. Everyone was kind of like, oh well, let's get out of here.
Yeah.
Nobody really stayed.
And you had, if you remember, Ricardo Rodriguez, who was the personal ring announcer for Alberto, kept doing the Alberto as everyone was filing out.
I think Ricardo tried. I thought Ricardo was doing his best.
He was the best part of the
He
whole
was.
thing.
He was the best part of that gimmick.
Yeah, he really
He
was.
out of there too.
I think Alberto at the time wasn't that good, and this leads to obviously we go down to WrestleMania 27, and I kept saying in all the awnings you had all the big stars and Alberto Del Rio because he was up there because he was obviously at this point he goes on to face Edge for the world title. Unbeknownst to all of us at the time, that ends up being Edge's last match until this past year. And in doing so, he ends up. They open the show. they opened WrestleMania, the first match on the show, and Alberto's unsuccessful in winning the world title.
Wow. Which
is surprising. Most of the time, the Royal Rumble winner goes on to win, but not this year. Any closing thoughts as you look back at this Royal Rumble, guys?
I mean, it was a great experience for me because I'd never been to a Royal Rumble, and for you guys to take me there was just a great experience.
How about you, James?
I could have used some female entrants. I could have used some karma being thrown in there again.
Yeah, especially with 40 swap.
I mean, like just throwing one away for Hornswoggle. Like, no offense to Hornswoggle. Like,
and he got a big spot in this Rumble. Him and Cena were like teaming up together and mocking each other's moves. And I remember they did a deal where Cena and Orton kind of went face to face and looked over at the WrestleMania sign because the sign had already been up at the time. And Cena and Orton were doing the stare down. And it was like they wanted the crowd to be like, oh my god, but instead everyone was just like not into it, over it, and like it was not like Hogan Warrior or any of that. People were way past Cena and Orton at this point, and they continued to wrestle for many more years.
Team Orton.
Yeah, Randy Orton over there.
So that, I mean, I will say, if I look back at this, probably the thing that jumps out to me, one of the big things is, right now at the stage of my life, I would probably have made sure we left the next day. Taking a nice leisurely stroll home, taking the day off work, giving myself a little opportunity to recuperate. I'm pretty sure after the show we hopped back in the car and went all the way back to Queens, New York.
Probably,
Is that what we did?
I drove,
Pretty insane to think that's...
And it was late already, too. We didn't
Yeah.
get back till like 2,
3, 4 in the morning, and then I know I went to work the next day, and and of course at the time I wasn't needing to wear any suits or anything like I do now. And so I wore my Royal Rumble shirt, and in hopes somebody would, were you at the Rumble last night? Oh, but at the time, probably no one was a wrestling fan at where I worked, except my buddy, Marvel enthusiast Joe Loftus. So he probably did, but everyone else, not so much.
Never heard of that person.
Never heard of him.
No.
Marvel enthusiast. John, I don't know. Oh well. Well, that is going to do it. Any final thoughts here that you guys want to say before we get out?
Do you have any final thoughts, Tom?
Well, I will say, at this point, my question for you, James, at this point, we leave the Royal Rumble. Do you think, any chance, 3 months later, we'd be attending our very first WrestleMania?
No.
Right?
I didn't think a few days before WrestleMania we'd be attending WrestleMania. It was a very spur-of-the-moment thing.
Obviously, probably, I want to get your thoughts on this, Tobey. Couple weeks after this show here, The Rock makes a surprise return to WWE as announced for the host for WrestleMania. What were your thoughts watching from home when The Rock came back to WWE?
All social media just blew up. Everything, Facebook, Twitter, everything blew up at the time. The Rock is back. The Rock is back. When he came out, I never heard it so loud. Like even in an indoor stadium when you watch basketball, the crowd was electric when he came out there, and you were excited. It was just amazing.
Well, it sounds good. I agree. We'll get into our thoughts.
I don't remember that at all, but I don't remember a lot of things.
We'll get into ours. Will you join me, James, here in a couple months?
Absolutely.
Look back at WrestleMania 27,
I'll be
our
here.
first WrestleMania live. Unfortunately, Toby, you were not there.
Nope.
You'd have to wait a couple more years for that. Actually, still not been to one, right?
No.
Never actually did get
Closest
one.
thing was Access.
And we did as best we could, which we'll save that story for WrestleMania 29 at a later time. But if you were there at Royal Rumble 2011 or have any thoughts of your own, make sure you leave them in the comment section below. Make sure you leave a big thumbs up and subscribe to Watch Along Wrestling for more videos just like this. Hopefully these guys will join me again real soon. I am Tommy on the Spot. I'll see you guys in the next video.